Hi, Dr. Robert Selig, and thank you for watching. And today I want to talk about the gut-brain connection. This is huge, and I want to show that relationship. So when we're dealing with chronic illnesses, we have to understand the gut-brain connection. So all of our chronic health conditions, whether we're talking about peripheral neuropathy, whether we're talking about our arthralgias, our degenerative joint diseases, our cardiovascular diseases, our blood sugar, diabetes, our migraines, our insomnias, whatever chronic disease we're talking about, we want to understand that there's a common thread, and there's going to be a metabolic process, our anemias, our blood sugar, our hormonal system. There's going to be a neurological component to this, and there's also going to be a structural component. So I always have to address you structurally, metabolically, and neurologically to get to the root of these chronic diseases. In the U.S., we're ranked 50th in the world in life expectancy, and we are the most obese country on planet Earth. And so we're leading the world in all these chronic diseases. We're either in first, second, and third in cardiovascular disease, and diabetes, and obesity, and cancer, autoimmune diseases. So depression, we obviously know something is wrong. So we have to look at this and understand this gut-brain connection. So the standard American diet, there's no coincidence that it really is the SAD diet, because this SAD diet is really putting us 6 feet under. There's a couple things we got to look at. We wait too long to eat between meals. That should never happen. You don't want to eat when you're starving. You want to eat when you're hungry. We have to have a better relationship with food. To have a better relationship with food, we got to understand the nervous system in the gut, which we're going to go into. We don't eat enough real foods. We eat these processed foods. We're addicted to sugar, and understanding that sugar really is the devil. So we have to understand this sugar addiction. Probably, I think, the worst addiction this country has is sugar. We eat psychological reasons, and the list goes on. And we certainly don't get enough good, high-quality fats. Got to hammer that home. Quality fats is what your brain and spinal cord are, fat. So we need the good fats. Got to get off this trans fat nonsense and get on the real good fats. We have to, don't be a grain brain, be a fat head. And really see the humor, the tongue-in-cheek that it's the grains are killing us, but the fats are going to make our brains a lot healthier. When there's poor gut function, understand that's the gut-brain connection. As above, so below. So the father of medicine, Hippocrates, said, look to the gut. There you will find the origins of almost all human illness. Not only Hippocrates said this, every natural doctor, from the Bernard Jensens to the Max Gersons, every natural healing doctor, whether it was allopathic, homeopathic trained, the herbalist, all said look to the gut. So we have to take that serious and really start looking to the gut, our gut feeling in our stomach. So anything that causes an immune battle in your gut will trigger inflammation. Inflammation is the hallmark of every disease in the body. And so we're creating a war in our gut tube, and we're not getting to the root of it. So we have to understand how these food sensitivities, these GMOs, these chemicals, these pesticides, all this affect over time, and again, it's cumulative. It's not just one dose of MSG that you had at a Chinese restaurant 10 years ago. It's cumulative of all the junk, all the processed food, all the synthetic food, all the chemicals, eventually get into your cells, and it creates a dysbiosis in the gut and starts to impede ATP production. So the top metabolic disturbances that cause chronic pain and illness: poor gut function, huge. Gonna hammer this one home, but we also want to understand how the blood sugar, the adrenals, the thyroids, the anemias, the many anemias, not just the iron deficient anemias, the chronic inflammations, the autoimmune, self-immune. Our own immune system is eating itself. So that's the thyroid condition, the diabetes conditions. So all these things have a gut relationship. So this is why we're going to hammer this point home today. So gut inflammation sets off a whole cascade of events of inflammation producing the cytokines. That's the fire. And it crosses the blood-brain barrier, gets into the, has an interaction with the immune cells, and that changes all the chemical mediators and the neurotransmitters, causing inflammation in the brain. And when the brain is off, the body will be off and can present itself as a whole list of every chronic condition. So let me just repeat that. 70 to 80% of your immune system is in your gut. That is big. It's huge. So I want that to sink in because this is the first place we got to go to. So this is just a cut of the tissue, and this is through the esophagus all the way down to the large intestine. You are wired with this yellow is this neural tissue. This neural tissue is regulated and modulated by your vagus nerve. That vagus nerve is the pneumogastric nerve. It's a parasympathetic mostly type of nerve that really detects and senses and sends information two-way street to and from the brain. So it's taking it from the gut nervous system, the enteric nervous system, to the vagus. It's two branches of the vagus nerve going up, which will communicate with the higher brain centers. So the vagus, the pneumogastric, it's the three dantians in the body because it covers the whole thing. It's actually the wanderer. It's the vagabond. The vagus nerve, the 10th cranial nerve, this is a huge one. And from a chiropractic point of view, structure influences this nerve greatly. That's the anterior head tilt that we get as we start to age and become more arthritic and osteoporosis. When that starts setting in, that changes the alignment of the neck, causing encroachment upon the nerve, and one of them being the vagus nerve. Huge to understand this vagus nerve and how it affects basically the whole epithelium cells, where we're going to get a lot of chemical mediators that are going to really set the body. When this stuff is hit with a lot of inflammation, this changes the brain. Huge. I mean, we start to see the dementias, the senilities, the Parkinson's, the MS. And before leading up to those hard lesions, we have signs and symptoms of these soft lesions that we see as our typical signs and symptoms. Now, just a little basic anatomy, how the vagus nerve is going to influence the gut. So when the gut is relaxed and it's breaking down the food and it's turning into chyme because it's influencing the pancreas to make its enzymes, and all the enzymes are chiming in to churn that food into that liquid. When this liquid food goes from stomach to small intestine in the duodenum, this sends off a signal. And that signal again is mediated via the vagus nerve. And that's going to trigger the CCK. And that CCK is huge to understanding how we need these hormones to regulate our digestion, and how the nervous system gut-brain connection is so influenced by this interaction. So when we have this overfiring, or what I call sympathetic dominance, where the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight, and where we have the parasympathetic, which is stay and play, rest and digest, feed and breed, because it controls our food, our sexual activity, controls so many autonomic functions in our brain that we really don't have to think about. So when we're not resting and playing and regenerating, we're on that sympathetic domination, which is go, go, go. And eventually you can get away with it, you know, in your teens and in your 20s, but when you hit your 30s, your 40s, your 50s, your 60s, eventually that sympathetic starts to burn out. Then we crash and burn, and we call it the weight gain, the loss of muscle tone. I'm always tired, waking up tired, going to bed tired, the aches and pains, the headaches, the foggy thinking. All this is when we're in sympathetic domination. It affects everything, and that's why vagus nerve, parasympathetic, gut connection. Start to understand how important this really is. And again, this is the inflammation, the gut-brain connection. And it's huge to get this down because this is the first area we're going to. So in functional medicine, we're going to treat the bad gut. That's what this short PowerPoint presentation is about, is treating this bad gut. So we have to remove the infections. We got to understand the diet component to this, and this is huge. That's a whole discussion in itself. And simply how to just get the gut lining, the flora, and the digestive enzymes back online so we can break down the proteins, fats, and carbs. So we're not producing the good stuff to deal with the metabolism of breaking down foods. We know proteins are the building blocks to all of our amino acids. Our amino acids make everything. So one, for example, if we don't have the right acidity in the stomach, once we start to get above the 3, 3.5, 4, we get into the 4 pH range, we become too alkaline in the stomach, and then we don't make the amino acids, we don't break down the foods, and we run into all the trouble starting here. And we need the vitamins to help this process happen. So, the stomach acid responsible for L-tryptophan. L-tryptophan will eventually be coming to make your serotonin. So that's just one pathway of thousands. Understanding that. Now, I always say thank God that we have Premier Research, who the founder, Robert Marshall, has given us the best nutrition in this country. He is a stickler for the highest quality. He has no excipients, no toxic tagalongs, no magnesium stearates. They're pure plant-based. Most of his stuff is plant-based in origin, of the highest quality herbs and plants from areas that are really grown with perfection. He's a stickler for that. So I will only use his, not only, but he's one of the top ones that I use in my protocols. His hydrochloric acid with the activator and some of the best digestive enzymes, the amylase, the protease, the lipase, and this is one of the best probiotic complexes you'll find in this country. Truly amazing. It's the strength of the bacteria, not the count. And he's emphasizing the strength of the bacteria. So when we have low stomach acid, that causes bacterial overgrowth. That bacterial overgrowth is the bad bacteria causing the candida, causing the infections, the H. pylori, the E. coli start to thrive. When our stomach acid isn't acidic, we run into every problem under the sun. So your symptoms of low stomach acid start with your typical heartburn and indigestion. That's huge. We think it's HCl we're burping up, and that's not what we're burping up. We're burping up when we're not breaking down the foods, then the foods, because of the low stomach acid, that's causing inflammation, and that's releasing lactic acid. So it's the lactic acid that we're actually burping up. So heartburn and indigestion, when we experience hair loss and peeling nails, that's another sign of low hydrochloric acid. Acne, eczema, constipation, gas and bloating, depression, and irritability. Depression, why when someone gets a gastric bypass surgery, one of the #1 side effects is cognitive decline. That's depression. When someone gets open heart surgery, we know we can't take a breath via that vagus nerve. That will also cause depression. So understanding how the hydrochloric acid is a huge player in understanding how it's connected to so many health conditions. Ulcers and food allergies, some of the biggies. So it's eventually low stomach acid will lead to a list of all these diseases. So we want to have good normal stomach acid to really to help the minerals, the vitamins, the bacteria, to help all that thrive and survive in our ecosystem. So it's huge to have a good acid, predominant in your stomach. Around 1 to 1.5 to 2 is where you want to be at. So we absolutely want to increase the stomach acids in our body, because once we start to become deplete of our stomach acidity, it leads to the poor absorption of the proteins, the poor absorption of the vitamins and minerals, and the bacteria and fungi and all the opportunistic infections start to thrive and flourish. So that was a basic presentation to focus on the gut. Understanding the gut is where we start when we're dealing with any chronic condition. So I wanted to drive that point home and really to hone in on let's fix the gut first. That's the best strategy to start with, in conjunction while we're dealing with maybe if a peripheral neuropathy, we got to quiet the pain with other therapies. But the main function today is to understand that healing all of our chronic illnesses, it's truly starting with fixing the gut. Thank you for watching, and look forward to going over more of my health healing video series. Thank you.